My recording is starting now. So mark the top and the bottom of the shape on your paper. You can make it the same size as it appears on the screen if you want. And draw a vertical axis to build the shape around. And then if you're working site size, just carry across your horizontal landmarks so you have a rough idea how big the knob is versus the base. And then mark the width of the knob. And if you're working site size, you can take a couple measurements, make sure you're close on the width of the knob. Yep. And this central axis idea is going to be very helpful. And notice that this part of the knob is about the same proportions as a light bulb. And the base of the knob is about the same width as the belly because it's cut from the same piece of wood. Yeah, sorry, Alex. I'm recording this lesson, so that's why I didn't say anything. So obviously we don't want to do any shading or shadow mapping over this axial line that we made at the beginning, so I'm going to clean that up before I move on to shadow mapping. And the main thing isn't that you make the lines perfect, it's that you make them lightly and loosely. Lightly, yeah. We always start light. And the most important thing you get right is that you make the form symmetrical. So try to achieve symmetry. I'm going to do some shadow mapping and then I'm going to come around and check your work. So the thing to notice about the shadow map is the way the form shadows all hook from left to right and the cast shadows hook from right to left. So you get this kind of zigzag movement as we work our way down the form. We're not going to assess this yet because we haven't done first shading, but we'll do that next. Text while you draw lines that fast you are drawing these days? She has to pick you up? What? Great. Just make the knob a little tiny bigger, Grace. Yeah, the top part.
Mr. Allen.
You're not really.
I'm gonna say you're a skinny legend now.
Haley, you don't want that bottom to be flat. It's just like the base of a cylinder. Can you see that?
Yeah.
See how much more of a curve there is?
Yeah.
Great. So you're just coming up a little high in this shadow. Put that horizon line in first. You can see like the horizon goes right through the fattest part of the belly, and then the shadow has to stay below that. See that? And you want to try to use a little lighter pressure if you possibly can. This is all really good. Notice how put it in your bag. If I see it out again, I'm going to report. I'll write it up. Okay? I've written anyone up in that thing. So,
What did you use?
the curve. Here goes. Hanging down there. No. I thought these had come. No, I didn't do it. I figured it must be perfect to get time of the game. The main flaw is side line first. See that? Put the base on the stick with that. And also, Andy, remember on the rubric, which is that I don't want to see any line you're making with your graphite pencil. So by doing it so dark, you're setting yourself up to have to erase a lot later, right? Well, let's turn the lights on then. I can't even see their work, so. I'm sorry, Andy said he's drawing so dark because he can't even see his lines. So what am I supposed to do? Blame Andy. Blame him, but don't bully him. Bullying is bad. Officially bad. I'm officially opposed to bullying. Yep. Okay, first shading. Help if I could find my pencil. Pencil sharpener. Okay, first we do first shading with the HB pencil. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to shade this way, but if you're right-handed, you're going to shade the other direction. And notice that I'm making my lines very close together and very faint. And I'm just laying in a tone using my most natural hand direction. This is the one stage of the drawing where I don't have to look too hard at the motif, which is the original. I'm just basically coloring in my outlines that I decided on already. And notice that I'm not stopping my line here and then continuing on the other side. I just go right across that outline because it's all part of the same big shadow shape. And then I do the same thing with white. I'll pause it again and give you time. And after I'm done with first shading, I'm going to take an eraser and erase the parts of my shadow map that I'm going to need soft edges on. So I don't need that shadow map. I don't need that anymore. Remember, the map is just to tell you where you need to put the shadows. Once you've laid them in, you don't need that map anymore. Now, at this stage of the drawing, you should feel like you're looking at a very blurred and low contrast version of the motif on your piece of paper. And you should, but it should look three-dimensional enough so that you can make comparisons and start to see flaws. So I'm going to say that this curve here on my drawing needs to push out a little further to the right. So I'm going to just redraw that contour a little further to the right. This curve here should be a little higher. And what I want you to do is the same thing. I want you to just look at the drawing at this stage and try to make 2 or 3 little corrections to make it look more like the reference. Probably the most important thing that I'm going to teach you, and that I want you to remember, is that this is a great opportunity to fix your drawing, because at this stage you haven't made any lines that are dark yet, and you can see the object in 3 dimensions, and that allows you to make intelligent corrections that you wouldn't notice if it was just outlines. I'm going to pop a little piece of light in here that I noticed I was missing. Our goal is really to get all our correcting done at this stage, so we don't have to make any corrections later on. Okay, I'm gonna say that's all right. I'm going to teach figure drawing at the Lime Academy. No, I mean the Lime Art Association next month.
You getting paid?
No, I'm not resume. Did everyone make at least one little correction of their drawing after the first shading?
Oh yeah.
Can you see how much easier it is? If you make an error in an outline drawing, you're not going to notice it. But if you make a little error and you shade it a little bit, it's going to stand out more. Does everyone get that? Yeah. It's really important. Okay. Here we go. Now the fun part. Yeah. Yeah. See, there's a drawer here. It says General's Charcoal. That has all of our charcoal in it. No, to the left. Yeah. Here. See, General's Charcoal.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Now, we're no longer trying to see the whole thing at once. We're just going to work at one area at a time now. So I'm going to use a 2B pencil. You can stay with your HB if you want. And we're going to try to get the roundness of this. And we're also trying to get the sharpness. Can you see how sharp this edge is? So we want to create an edge that's equally sharp in our drawing. To do that, we have to shade with the direction of the edge, like this. Doesn't mean that we have to press hard, but if we don't shade that direction, it's not going to work. The other thing that doesn't work is you can't create a sharp edge with a dull pencil. So if you're having trouble making this look sharp enough, you might need to sharpen your pencil. Okay, can everyone see this edge here? Tell me, is this a soft edge or a hard edge? Okay, it's a hard edge. Why does it look so soft?
Because there's like a light ahead above it.
Well, nope, it is a hard edge. The reason that edge looks soft is because there's very little value difference. When you see an edge that has little value difference, you're going to tend to think it's softer than it is. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're still going to use sharpening strokes here, but it's not going to stand out that much because it's such a small value difference. So notice I really brought the edge out with those strokes, but now I'm going to knock it back by shading over this whole area. And now we're going to focus on shading direction. I think I'm going to zoom in a little. What we want to do is put our pencil down in the core shadow, and every stroke we lift up into the gray zone between light and dark. It's our transition area. Whoops, my pencil just broke. And notice that I'm curving a little so that when I get to this outside edge, I'm sharpening it too. So this is a sharpening stroke because this is another sharp edge coming down here.
I'm not doing too well on this one.
You're probably wishing you do it a little bigger, aren't you, Jack? So notice these strokes curve a little bit around the form, and these strokes flow down the edge of the form. So reflected lights are really subtle, and if they look too bright, you see how my reflected light is starting to look, it stands out too much? Can everyone agree with me on that? So when my reflected light looks too bright, what I have to do is just I go back to my first shading direction and just bring that whole area down a little bit and flatten it. Because it's very subtle. Now, as long as we're finishing the top of this shape, we may as well So as long as we're finishing up this shape, yeah, there's just a little too much talking in the back of the room. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and do the white at the same time, so we can just wrap this up, okay? So I'm going to stay zoomed in. And these are sharpening strokes because we want this bright outline to stand out against the grayer background. Notice that I never touched the paper here because it was already really close to the value of my paper, so I didn't see any need to touch it. Now, this is important. I want to lighten this edge without pressing too hard so that it's just creating a sharp edge without too much brightness along the edge. Because I want you to notice that if you look up here, right here, this is much lighter than it is around here. So we want to save our brightest white for the highlight, which is towards the middle of the center light, right through here. And in the same way that we start out with the reflected light making it too bright and then we flatten it by shading across it, I'm starting out with too bright of a highlight and then I'm flattening it out by just using my first shading direction and just sort of hatching around it.
This is one of my worst drawings.
And to get a sense of this curve through here, remember we want to reconnect with this same shading direction that we did along this edge. So I'm curving down towards those hatching lines with hatching lines coming from the other direction. And the idea is it's like two sets of fingers reaching towards each other but not touching. And that's about it for the top of the shape. Feel like I need to flatten my reflected light out just a little more over here and darken my core shadow. Yep. Okay, I'm going to zoom out now so you can see where we're going with this. So sharpening strokes always go with the edge. I'm sure it looks better than what you did last time. Well, doesn't it? Well, this shape might be a little hard for some of you, but well, some people are ready to move on to these, so it's still practice with the technique, even if it's a little hard. Okay, notice how sharpening strokes go this direction on the right, and they go this direction on the left, and we're just gradually changing from this curve on the left to straight up and down to this curve on the right, and that's giving us a sense of the roundness of the form. Does anyone see a reflected light under here? Yeah, is it very obvious? No, it's very subtle, right? So that means we can't ignore it, but I'm going to flatten this area with some more first shading. And then I'm going to do these sort of curves for this little skirt of the form. What you have to believe that every you can play some of your Hebrew music if you'd rather.
Oh yeah. What about my Mongolian throat singing?
No, I was talking to Jack. So this form is a little confusing. I'm not sure it's exactly a shadow. It's a halftone that may need a little tiny bit of black on it. But notice that as soon as it enters the shadow area over here, that same form becomes a reflected light. Can you see that? So those of you who are still used to thinking of shading as kind of coloring things in are going to have a hard time with this idea, because the same form is dark over here and it's light over here.
Oh yeah, this shape stinks.
It's,
My drawing of it, not the shape itself.
do you think this is harder than the donut?
Yeah. Well, I just didn't do it. I kind of really rushed on this one.
Mm-hmm. So the key to making this shelf show up enough isn't going dark on the shelf, it's going light above it here and below it here. You see how that really makes it pop out? And then as we turn the corner here, that little shelf becomes skinny and finally just fades away. So does everyone see the reflected light underneath the base of this thing? So the same technique we used up here, we're just sort of curving from the core towards the light like this, and then sharpening the edge underneath, allowing the reflected light to really stand out a lot, and then we're going to go back and flatten it with some first shading again. All our shading on the ground is always going to be horizontal, so it looks like the ground plane. And I've been talking to some of you about the fact that
I made them not horizontal.
you're not supposed to outline, but you are allowed to draw thin cast shadows. So this on the ground here is just another thin, it's a sliver of a cast shadow. Yeah, I haven't done any white on this yet. So notice this is all a little below eye level, so I'm curving around the form here, doing a little sharpening along the right edge, and then I'm going to connect with my shadow lines by curving around this way. Notice this edge up here is a little sharper than this one because it's a cast shadow edge. And wherever we want an edge to be really sharp, we need to cover up all the gray.
Are you going to check colors or do you want us to hand them?
You can hand them in.
Where?
We're not done yet. So in the same way that we allow a lot of gray paper along this edge because it's so soft, we're going to go back and get rid of all the gray paper along this edge because it is so sharp. And that's a way of thinking that I hope you're starting to get used to. Now when I sharpened that edge, I made it a little too bright. So I'm going to take my knead eraser and just lift off some of the white. And I'm going to sharpen over here a little bit. And a little bit right here too. And as I just said, anytime I'm sharpening an edge and it gets too bright, I can just lift off some of the charcoal and it's still going to be sharp. Now, one of the ways, can you please stop talking out there? One of the ways that you need to change your thinking sometimes is, see how this surface faces towards the ceiling? I'm going back and making it darker. Most of you feel like things that face the ceiling should be lighter still, so you want to start looking for these dark accents on the surfaces that face upwards and not the ones that face downwards. See, like this right here, starting to face the ceiling, gets very, very dark. This really dark right here. Okay, I'll stand by the door and collect these on your way out. sometimes we lose edges when we're not sure where they go anyway, and we're like, huh. And like, oh, I'll just not make it show it too
Yeah.
much. And that never works because
Yeah.
people know that you're just sort of
And
avoiding.
the other one, is blurry, so you can't see the edge.
Uh-huh.
That was guessing.
Right.
I went to the dentist, so I don't really want to eat anything right now. Because the taste is so bad.
Yeah. Oh, it's second lunch, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't know, I just can't like eat after the dentist. Better I do move correct for me to just raw.
Uh-huh.
Also I'm just like so nervous about tonight. We're kind of like 10% greater receiving responses. I think like 10 girls are applying to Ivy. And like I know
Oh,
that
you think they're gonna announce tonight?
well they all Ivy Day, they all coordinated together. It's like their little, you know.
Oh, today's Ivy Day?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Emily O'Brien is applying to Cornell. Chloe Siblin is applying to Harvard. Hannah will be hearing back from Harvard. I hope Hannah gets into Harvard. Judy got deferred, but I hope this time around.
Does
And-
Kelly Sablon have a chance of getting into Harvard?
Well, she's the president of NHS. She's getting honor society. She knows a lot of extracurriculars. Yeah, and it's.
Is she the top of her class?
She probably is. I'm not sure. They don't. The school doesn't list it like that, but she's in as many APs as I am. Well, yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like one or two fewer, but she basically has like 5 or 6 APs. She does well in her classes, and the Irish, you know, she's the Irish dancing.
Oh, really? The
Yeah.
step dancing?
Yeah,